Okay, we'll get started now. Hi, my name's Daniel Gargiulo, Qlik Practice Lead for Acumen BI. For those of you outside of New Zealand, Acumen are an elite Qlik partner and we have a significant focus on the health sector. Firstly, I'd just like to welcome and thank everyone for taking the time to attend the webinar. We have over 80 people registered across the ANZ health sector, so it's a really fantastic turnout. I'd also like to thank Rob O'Neill, who's taken the time to present for us today. So Rob's based in the UK, so it is late in his evening, so we really do appreciate that. Rob is a Qlik Luminary. He's also the Head of Information at University Hospitals of Morecambe NHS Foundation Trust, and he's going to present for us today on the data-driven command centre developed and deployed on the Qlik platform. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping points. Firstly, questions. There will be time for questions at the end, and you can just ask these through the Q&A panel on the Zoom. The second point here is we will be recording the session. However, distribution will need to be approved by Rob, and we'll do that after the session. And if you are interested in a copy or to see that, then please contact Luciana to request this. Over to you, Rob.
Great, thanks Dan. Good morning everybody. So yeah, thank you for having me here. I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes about the work we're doing in the northwest of the UK, and then I'll go into a live demo of the Command Centre app. So first of all, really for me, the piece of work we've been doing and analytics transformation in general, it's been really successful because of the way people have been interacting with the technology to do some really interesting and creative things. So you know, it's got its basis in socio-technical systems theory, if you know about that. We've put a lot of effort into thinking about the way our staff interact with analytics and with the QlikSense UI, so that it works for them. It really is an operational tool designed to drive actions. You know, it's a solution, and we observe when we watch people working within the command center environment and also using the app on their phones remotely. That it does foster creativity, and that's been a big part of the drive of the project. You know, we're interested in transformation. We're really interested in using technology to enable people to deliver care better and quicker and more cost effectively. And we think we've got something which does that. And the good news is, it's highly portable and highly scalable. So I'll talk you through our journey. To start with a bit of context about, it's sort of based on the UK, but you know, all the research shows that globally healthcare and public services in general are facing the same pressures. We really got to a position last year, 2018, where demand was escalating. Staff numbers were challenging. There's the B word that no one talks about looming in the UK, less than a month away now, and that's really impacted on the public services against a backdrop of increasing demand. So from that came the conversations which led to the command centre concept. Morecambe, I'd be surprised if many people know where Morecambe is. Morecambe is situated in the northwest of the UK. You can see from the map here that kind of covers our catchment area. It's large geography, about 1,000 square miles. It is made up of some challenging topography in terms of delivering of services. It's mountainous. There's a lot of rurality, and there are also some reasonably large urban areas. There's a lot of deprivation variation. Some of the people living in classified as being in the most affluent sort of deprivation index live in some of the areas, and also we've got people, particularly in the urban areas, living in very deprived conditions. So there's a huge swing of population in terms of demographics. and there's also an aging population, which creates challenges. As a hospital trust, we operate across 3 acute sites, and also the organisation is an integrated provider delivering community services as well as acute services. So the 3 main sites, there are quite a lot of smaller community-based sites, and coincidentally, we've got a requirements gathering workshop with our community teams tomorrow morning UK time, to talk about building a community services extension to the command centre. So more details on that to follow. Morecambe Bay is one of the, it's called a Vanguard site. It's one of the first areas within the UK to be working as an accountable care organisation, and it's technically called an integrated care partnership. So that's the various stakeholders involved in health and social care working together under one umbrella organisation. So acute, community services, primary care, social services, and so on. So just, I think these sort of statistics will be familiar to you in New Zealand. In terms of the UK, some general backgrounds, the UK population is estimated to be, will be 73 million by 2040 to 2041. In the next 10 years or so, over 20% of the UK population is projected to be elderly or over 65 years or old. We're seeing real pressure over here in terms of access to social care. I see it on a daily basis within an acute environment, and part of the command centre has been built to start to expose some of those delays. We have a lot of patients who are being cared for in inverted commas within an acute environment, when really their care would be much better met within a social services or a step down facility, but there really isn't capacity. So some issues around historical funding, some issues around the availability of beds, of capacity, and also historically a real dearth of data available around the interface between acute services and social care here. So again, the command centre is looking to expose that and drive change, and it's a common problem globally. Funding for public services is difficult. It's at an all-time low within the NHS, and that's replicated globally. But no, conversely, never has there been a better time to make a real impact with technology as well. So the command center solution is looking at the moment predominantly at emergency care, the non-elective pathway, and this graph is showing what I think will be a familiar pattern seen in New Zealand. The grey line is showing nationally for the UK, or for England and Wales, the number of patients attending an emergency department since 2013 to 2019. So you can see a sort of an upwards trend. The green line is showing the performance against the national waiting time standard for ED, which is for patients to be seen, treated and discharged within 4 hours, and you get this sort of converse relationships. It's like a scissors kind of pattern. So demand's increasing, the ability to turn patients around in a timely manner is decreasing, and that trend's continuing. In terms of the organisation where I work, Morecambe Bay Hospitals, exactly the same pattern. So the same time period, exactly the same measures. The grey line shows the volume of patients arriving at the major emergency departments, and the green line shows the timeliness of those patients being processed. So again, at odds. So in thinking about the solution, we identified this problem in 2018, late, just in end of September. We met with our operational and clinical teams, and they were really worried about the approaching winter. Winter pressures have become the norm. and they were talking about entering into winter plus during the winter. They were worried about the number of beds that were available. They're worried about the escalating demand for services. They're worried about the acuity of patients, and they're worried about the age profile of patients. And they're worried about their staffing mix and availability. So there was a problem and there was a lot of concern, but out of this, we had a really positive discussion around what we could do, how we could use data, how we could use Qlik as a platform to really do something that tangibly could make a difference to how the organisation worked. We adopted a user-centred design approach. We were very clear from the outset that we needed to implement a solution that was highly functional and highly designed around the needs of the users. The concept is that no object in the command center app should be without purpose and without function, and also without form. Qlik were great for us to work with as a partner, very supportive, and that helped us move at pace. For us, the ability to undertake comprehensive and rapid requirements gathering was really crucial, and that really brought the organisation into the process. It was a business-led project supported by informatics, and that really worked. We used a sort of agile approach to development. Not sure if you use the acronym PDSA, Plan, Do, CACT, but that's that really worked for us. So we gathered requirements, we did some rapid prototyping, took it back to the business, the operational teams, the clinical teams, refined what we were doing, and then repeated that process. So it was an iterative development process. We had really good sponsorship. I think absolutely key for me to have the support of the CEO and the Chief Operating Officer, and that really laid the path for delivering the project quickly. We went from idea to go live in under 3 months, about 2.5 months, and that included not just developing the app, but standing up a physical command center room, an operations center with all the kit, large touchscreens on the walls, comms equipment in it, designed to work around the way the operational clinical teams were working to manage patient flow. Just looking a bit more in detail at the time frame, again, really, the details not important, but it's really trying to reiterate that the ability to move quickly is key, and I think we learned a lot that really helped with buy-in. So we did some custom development of extensions for the app, including that. The app went live start of December from requirements gathering at the end of September, and the physical room went live just before Christmas 2018. So just design principles of the app and the command center. We were always clear that we needed to be feeding in live data from our various clinical systems. The app currently refreshes every 2 minutes, which is about right. I think we could make it quicker, but operationally it feels about right, balanced against the load on the servers. The UI, the user interface, we put a lot of thought into that, and had a really good developer who really understood the need to get that right. It was always key for us to be able to give users the ability to drill down to a patient record level. So patient details are available within the app, but not on the summary screens. The focus was always on predictions, being able to predict what will happen in the future and measure performance against it. Most data is either live or predictive, and the only historical data in the app is used to drive the prediction algorithms. Mobile ability, the ability to give staff access to it across sites, across the health community, was absolutely key. Qlik Sense works really well for that, and we wanted it to be scalable. So we started with non-elective care As I mentioned, we're gathering requirements tomorrow for developing a community services arm to it, and we're in the process of developing an elective care version as well. So in the end, within the next probably 2 months, 3 months, we ought to have a 360-degree view of the health system in real time and in sort of forward-looking predictive analytics. I've talked about the sort of the benefit of working in an agile type way. That worked for us. I think the key learning I took away from the project in terms of this was the concept of having bridge professionals, so key people who were operational and clinical, who were able to act as a conduit to us as a technical team within the informatics function of the organisation. That worked. Having champions to work with opened a lot of doors for us. So on to the solution. I'll go into a live demo of the app shortly, but this is what it looks like. So in terms of the app, there are 67 live and predictive metrics, and they cover what's happening in terms of ambulances conveying patients into the hospital. We've got patients who are inbound into the emergency department, patients who are transferring from the ED department into an inpatient setting. Patients who are waiting for a bed. We've got a live bed state built into the app, and the command center app really enabled us to really sort out and go live with a live bed state across the hospital sites. We've got patients who are in an inpatient facility, in the wards waiting for discharge, and also an executive overview screen as well. Just a really sort of quick summary of the architecture. Don't worry about the detail really, but this was trying to give a really simplified view of how we're using data from a number of source systems, a number of clinical systems, our EMR. We've got a bed management system from our live pharmacy tracking system, from the ambulance service, and using Qlik to integrate that. And then we can guarantee to our users and to our executive team that we can deliver the same data in exactly the same time to both the physical command center and also the apps that the staff are using. And we're also looking at projecting parts of the command center application through patient-facing analytics, which we placed around the site in strategic locations. And also we will start augmenting, particularly as we move into the view of what's happening outside of hospitals and community services. We'll augment the data within the command center with data from across primary care and across other care settings. And that's been, we've got that data now, and that will form a key part of the out of hospital view of flow. It was really important for us to develop strong partnerships. I'm delighted that there's interest from New Zealand and Australia in terms of collaborating, and I see some really great things being promoted that are happening over there. So I'm keen to connect. We've developed some good commercial relationships with a number of organisations. We've got some strong working relationships with our local university, and off the back of that, we have a data science team which has been we've set up over the past few months, and they're actively contributing to working on things like, can we better predict patients who will arrive in ED, or patient outcomes once they enter the hospital. So some really interesting work to do around that using machine learning and other methodologies. An interesting use case today, NHS Tayside, which is it's effectively a health board in Scotland went live with the Command Center app. So that's fantastic. It was a really rapid deployment, and I'm really pleased actually. So we're actively looking to collaborate with people, both in terms of the care systems. This was delivered through a commercial arrangement we have with a UK company, and I think that's it shows the value of partnering really to me. So that's positive. So have a look on LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn, and there should be details about that. NHS Tayside. In terms of measuring impact, it was always really important for us that we could deliver improved outcomes, and we needed to show a return on investment, obviously, and the whole point of this was around transformation and improving care. So we've got a number of performance metrics that we're monitoring and are going in the right direction. There is something around the efficiency gains of resource of staff, which aren't cash releasing, but we know that staff are working in a much more efficient way, and that we have patient flow meetings which happen anywhere between 3 and 6 times a day, where sort of key clinical and operational staff and executive level staff, depending on the pressure, congregate and meet and look at the issues affecting flow. So those meetings now are driven by the command center, and they've dropped in time from around 45 minutes to between 5 and 10 minutes. So a real gain. We think it's well over £100,000 UK pounds per year in terms of staff and release. So it is significant. 3 performance metrics I'd just like to show you. The first one is looking at the how quickly patients are triaged upon entering the emergency department. So we have a national standard to hit that patients should be triaged within 15 minutes of arrival. You can see that the command centre went live here, so late December 2018, and soon after that we had a really significant increase in performance, dramatic, and that now patients are around 94-95% of patients are triaged within 15 minutes. So a big improvement. The second metric to show you is patients who are outlying on in inappropriate care setting. So these are inpatients being cared for, either medical patients being cared for on a surgical ward, or surgical patients being cared for on a non-surgical ward. So graph is showing the same time period. It's going from January 2018 to yesterday. We always expect a peak in patients. It's a really good indicator of pressure of beds. We expect a peak over the winter. This last winter, the previous winter, 2018-19 winter, and the peak was much lower, and also the recovery was much quicker, and the number of patients outlying has remained significantly lower than it has been since the sort of the winter peak when the command centre went in. So again, we're seeing a positive impact. And the final metric is to do with patients who are being discharged in a timely manner. We try and get patients to be discharged by midday. It's a difficult metric in terms of delivery, but it is a focus for the organisation. It is more variable. This is measuring same time period and the percentage of patients who are discharged by midday. There's a lot of variability, but we are seeing, again, there is a significant upwards movement, although it has dipped somewhat over the past couple of months. But again, a positive impact to the command centre. It correlates with the go live date as well. And that's it. Hopefully that wasn't too quick a talk through in terms of the journey we're on. My details are here. No, Dan will send out copies of the slides to those people who want them. But I'm really interested in collaborating. People getting in touch. So please do. There are my contact details. And I will now jump straight into a live demo of the app. Here we go. Great. We deliver the app over both internally on our network and also over a reverse proxy. So it's accessible over the web for staff, and that's integrated with their Office 365 accounts. So in terms of mobility, it's great. It works. We have staff working across a large geographic area. A lot of staff not physically working within physical buildings where there are networks. So that's been a big win for us, being able to unshackle it. We also have the app displayed on a tab by tab basis along the walls of the command center, which is a physical building in our main hospital site. So if you imagine each of these tabs is a physical screen. They're large touch screens. They're always on, and the idea is that people can walk in amongst them and interact with the analytics as they go. So if you imagine you're physically in the command center, it's laid out so that the tabs are chronological. There's a performance one, which is the overview. That's also displayed on the Chief Executive's office wall 24/7. That's a room where the board meet on a regular basis, so they always have a sight of live performance. Within the command center, and the screens are chronologically placed so that they flow sort of left to right in terms of the flow of patients. So the screen one's looking at patients who are either inbound by ambulances or physically within the emergency departments. Screen two is looking at the sort of discharge rate from the ED departments, and also those patients who are migrating to either an assessment unit, assessment ward, or an inpatient ward. Screen three is looking at our live bed state. So that's looking at how many beds are free, how many beds are predicted to be free, what's our occupancy, what's our predicted occupancy like. And screen four is looking at the flow of patients outbound. So discharges, expected discharges, and also where the blockers in terms of the patients who are waiting for discharge into a social care environment or other environment. That's screen four. And then we've also got a screen called Opal, which is to do with escalation reporting centrally, which all trusts within the UK have to do. So I'll go through the screens in order. I won't spend overly long on them. I don't want to do death by Qlik sense, but it is useful to get an overview. They do look a bit strange on my laptop, which is a bit of an odd size. So they don't. It doesn't look as good, obviously, as on a really large scale format. So performance today pretty standard. I think most healthcare boards, hospitals have this type of thing. So this was, I won't go into this. This is just picking off the key metrics which our CEO and COO are most interested in, and given the ability to see them on a sort of day-to-day basis, and they can cut them by these are our three main sites here. So the next tab. So this is the first main screen of the command center, looking at ambulance arrivals and patients within ED. So any of these staff can select a particular site or not, I'll pick our Lancaster site. The top row of objects shows the number of ambulances who are on their way to the hospital. For any of these KPI boxes, most of them you can click on the title and get a drill down to a low level of detail. So I know that two ambulances are incoming into our main site. I can see the call number for the ambulances here. I can see when they're expected. So one's expected now imminently, one's inbound 24 minutes. I know the number of patients on board. And if I'm clinical, I'll understand what these clinical codes mean. I don't, but the staff who work in the command centre do. So that kind of gives you a view of the functionality. My screen's just frozen. There we go. Sorry, I think it's due with being on maximised. So for any of the objects, we give staff the ability to drill down. The idea is that we're not cluttering at the front sort of canvas of the app with too much detail. So for Lancaster, 2 ambulances on the way. The next ambulance is 47 minutes away. We saw that when I clicked onto the drill down here. Our ambulances in the last hour have been 7 for the Lancaster site, and that's 4 more than predicted. 2 ambulances are waiting, so they'll be physically queued up outside the door of the ED department. One's been is going through the handover process now, and there are a couple of pre-alerts. So that's kind of the flow of ambulances in. Most screens have the predicted versus actual analysis. This is a demo version of the app I'm showing, so its timing's not right. But the grey line showing predicted volume of activity, and the green line showing day to date by hour. At the bottom of the screen, it's showing the live view into the emergency departments. This is quite interesting. We're looking at how many arrivals there have been in the past hour, how many patients have walked in or arrived by ambulance in the department. Using the demo app, is showing busier than predicted, which is sort of being borne out through the ambulance arrivals. 2 patients waiting for triage. Again, same concept. If I want to see who those patients are, click on the extension box and then drill down to a low level of detail. This would usually have the patient, our internal patient number from our EMR showing, so that the staff knew who they were. So that tells me a bit about them when they arrived, how long they were waiting in the emergency department, their age, etc., etc. You put whatever you want in there. Again, because I'm maximising my screen, it's been a bit strange. And then sort of looking through the flow of patients who are waiting within ED, the average waiting time is 30 minutes. That's pretty good. That's better than predicted. 18 minutes less than predicted. The resus occupancy is at 150%. So they will have converted an additional bay into a resuscitation bay. We split our performance in ED between majors and minors performance. Minors performance is usually good. Majors can often be, struggling. Reasonably good performance when the snapshot was taken for the demo app, and then other indicators. We're looking at patients who are waiting a long time, over 12 hours, etc. So that's the screen 1. The next screen is looking at the transition between ED, emergency department, and inpatients. So again, the same concept. I'll look at just one site. I can see that ambulances arrivals are fully converting into ED attendances. 10 patients left the department in the past hour, and 28 patients ED. You get the idea. And then some predictive analytics around what we predict in terms of our discharge rate versus our actuals. These track pretty well. We have worked out some pretty accurate ways of being able to monitor and predict that demand there. And then finally on this screen, this is looking at the patients who are waiting to be moved into an inpatient facility. So split by whether they're emergency, non-elective admissions, or electives, which are down here in terms of to come in. We call it TCIs, showing. So that's the sort of transition between the two areas. The next screen is our looking at our live bed state. And this has been really important in terms of changing the culture of our bed managers operating using bits of paper and clipboards to using the app in a real-time basis to manage beds. And that's been, it's been years in the making. It's been built upon a targeted program of optimization of our EMR. But it's been a really big win, and it's really important for us in terms of being able to deliver that to help the staff manage flow better. I've just picked our general and acute beds, and this is showing that we've got a net bed state of 33 spare beds. But then if we're looking to run at 85% occupancy, we've actually got minus 38 beds. And so it's kind of giving the bed managers the ability to sense the pressure on the wards, and particularly relate that back to patients who are inbound from the ED department or in ambulances. So staff can split this. We can look at any particular site, and they can identify how many beds are free, how many beds we expect to be available either today, almost certainly, and possibly later on today, and also tomorrow. So that's using our live bed management system to expose that data through Qlik Sense, and then also some counts of where we've got beds out of action. So we're showing that we've got 3 beds closed for cleaning, 8 out of order, and 14 in total closed. There's the ability also as well to let's look at surgery beds. Let's remove the G&A, and then drill down to any particular ward if I wanted to. Just close that down. And the final main screen is around the flow out of the inpatient environment. So this screen has changed a bit since the demo app was the copy was taken, but it's really looking at both the patients who are either blocked in hospital waiting for discharge, or patients who are ready to go home. So currently across our sites we have, using the demo app, 47 patients who are outlying, who are medical patients on non-medical wards, and 4 patients who are surgical on a non-surgical ward. We're expecting 60 patients to be discharged. There's a possibility there's some additional ones. Then that's using patients' estimated date discharge, date, time recording. And we also know that there are 114 prescriptions in process being progressed. And this is built off our live prescription tracking system. It gives the ability for staff to go in and pick perhaps this is one of our assessment units, our medical assessment units, and they'll see that there's one patient who's had a TTO created but hasn't been progressed. That gives them the ability to immediately check on progress and chase up that. We know that's a key blocker in terms of the process of giving prescriptions and medication to patients to their time of discharge. That's probably all I'll say about this screen. Same concept. I won't go into every object, but we can look at which patients are long length of stay patients, any patient who's a late transfer to care. So that's the patient who's classified as waiting for social care, and some monitoring of thinking back to the outcomes metrics. We're measuring patients who are discharged by 12 p.m. 14 as the time this was cut. I won't click onto the pop-up because it will it'll freeze on my laptop, but I could have a look at that and see where those patients were, if interested. I think that's it, Dan. That's kind of a quick talk through the app. So I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic, and thank you again, for taking the time to present to us. So there's a few questions that have come through. So if we run through some of those, and then we can wrap up after that. For those of you that are attending, if you do want to ask questions, there should be a Q&A box that you can click on, and you'll be able to type your questions in there. And as they come through, I'll ask them to Rob. So one of the first ones we've got is asking around the size of the team that worked on the project, and it'd be maybe good to maybe talk a little bit about the types of roles that worked on the project as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. So a small team, myself as I guess the sort of digital leader for the project. We had 2 developers working on it, more or less full time, for 2 months. One developer worked on it full time exclusively, and one worked on it probably half of their time, and a lot of that was working on the extension work, and so there was some development of some QlikSense widgets, and then they were migrated into QlikSense extension. So quite a bit of work on that. There was my role was really around the link to the operational team, the operational management team, and we had a couple of operational sponsors, bridge professionals, who gave quite a reasonable amount of time to sort of check progress and design with us. So I think 1.5 developers, 6-7 weeks probably, pretty focused development work to deliver it.
Okay, fantastic. So we've got a couple of questions around the predictive work, because it does obviously have a lot of predictions built into this. So just trying to understand what language you use, whether it's R, Python, something else, and if there are any particular model.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a mixture. The basic predictions are calculated quite simply using historical data. So looking at for any particular day of the week, what's happened over the past 6 weeks, and taking an average of that. And that was our algorithm for most of the predictions for a while. That has been remodeled recently, and now the developer who developed this is now working across the analytics team and our data science team, and she's working on she's developed an R model, and she's also looking at using machine learning to better predict what will happen. I think for that, I'd be really happy to put people in contact if they're interested in having a technical conversation with her, and I'm sure she'd be happy to share methodologies that we've used.
Yep, perfect. All right. No, so it sounds like some of that, the predictive analytics, machine learning stuff, progressing, into the future as well, and you're continuing to develop that, which is good to hear. And so definitely, with people that are asking questions around this, it might be that we can set up a separate session and put people in touch directly.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. I mean, and we're really keen to learn, what other people are doing in that space as well. So yeah, I think if some sort of collaboration around that would be really valuable to us, definitely.
Perfect, cool. I'll set that up after the session.
Okay.
Just another question around the EMR that's being used for your beds, ED, etc., and probably following on to that, is any of the data entered manually, or is it all coming directly from source system? Oh. Did you catch that question, right?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, it was a design principle of ours from the outset that we we wouldn't take manual data as a data feed. So that was really important for us in terms of credibility and making sure that we unlocked, a really, I guess a solution that worked. So it's all electronically fed. The data is as it is held within the clinical systems live. There's no adulteration of it. So we use DXC's Lorenzo EMR, which feeds the bulk of the data. We also do have an in-house co-developed bed management system as well, which fully integrates with Lorenzo. So it messages data in and out of Lorenzo. So there's sort of two-way flow of data between the two systems. But the bed management system, I guess it augments the EMR UI really with some sort of physical boards, electronic boards, which the wards use to manage patients between beds in particular. Yeah.
No, fantastic. And just another question here around training and sort of how much training was required, particularly from a clinical staff and nurses perspective.
Yeah. Not hardly any. We've deliberately sort of used I guess the kind of inbuilt power of Qlik Sense as an intuitive framework to deliver something that works. There is, if I DF11 my screen, one of the photos I brought up in the presentation, which is of one of our ED patients. So this guy here. So it's a guy called Andy. He's a matron in our main emergency department. This wasn't a stage photo. This was the first time he walked into the command centre. He hadn't seen it before. It was cold. He walked into it and immediately started walking up the screens. He was interacting with them, and he was, as he was doing so, he was telling us what it was telling him, and how it would revolutionise the way that he and his teams were able to manage patients and understand what was happening around the hospital. So I think that, to me, I think that photo kind of sums it up really. That it's, I think with the right kind of thought and engagement, it should be really intuitive. So we've kind of shied away from rolling out dedicated training because of that.
No, fantastic. So we've got a couple that might sort of require you to jump back into the app. So there's a few people looking to see the Opal escalation screen.
Got it. Sorry, that's I didn't do that one. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. So this is and I'm guessing you have similar requirements in New Zealand. So we're calculating the Opal levels from the data held within the app. So it is from the app. This is the only kind of the concession, the sort of design concession we had to make to historical data using this screen. So it's the only screen that shows any sort of historical data that's not used for a prediction going forwards. So yeah, the idea is, so the criteria we've got: bed occupancy in terms of our general and acute beds, patients who are delayed transfers to care, patients who have medical outliers, cancellations of surgery. There's some work being done around that one. Beds which are closed, you saw the beds closed on the bed screen. ED performance will be obviously, and handover delays as well. And I think, checking on it, might be some more. Yeah, and also patients who are within the ED department who are delayed for 12 hours. The handover delays, there's an issue with getting that data from our ambulance provider. That's been worked on at the moment. So that's calculated from data within the app, split by these are our two main site codes for them, and then aggregated up into an Opal level. And each one of these has a weighting applied to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no, fantastic. There's another question around what does a red and golden patients mean? Now, I don't know, I didn't sort of notice anything with red and golden patients, but I've probably missed something.
Yeah, so they're on the screen in terms of flow of out. So a golden patient are patients who are identified by the in the ward rounds as patients who will definitely go home. So I think the idea is that you identify some golden patients, they will go home, and they kind of stimulate a sort of more discharge focused way of working for the clinical teams. So that's a golden patient. So we're capturing those from our bed management system. That a patient can have a flag applied against them that this patient will definitely go home today. So that's a golden patient. And a red patient is patients who are assessed using the red to green criteria. And I can't remember exactly how that's defined. So that's that's a clinical decision around classification of patients. I'd have to confirm exactly how we're defining which patients are red. That's
okay. All right. Yeah, that's no problem. So I guess a couple of questions around data and data management. So how are you pulling the information out of the EMR? Is it sort of a direct connection with ODBC? Is it HL7? Is it a flat file that gets dumped out?
Yeah. So HL7. So we're taking the data via HL7 into a SQL data mart, and then we're aggregating it in SQL and pushing it into Qlik Sense. So hence the sort of 2-minute reload time is probably as quick as we can do it, in terms of there's a bit of shunting around of data to do that. But yeah, that's how we do it. I think
okay. And sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think the different ways of doing it. I think the developers tested a few methodologies, and they're pre-aggregating data before it hits Qlik Sense, just to ensure that the reload time's super quick.
Yes.
But it could be done either way. It wouldn't matter.
Okay, that's right. And just a question around like month-end performance reporting or anything like that. So do you store the information in other ways or report it in different ways from a performance reporting perspective?
Yeah, we do, and we're going through the process at the moment of migrating to this to feed performance reports that are submitted centrally. So yes, in terms of we need to submit daily SITREP reports to NHS England, and we're already using the data that's representing this to feed that process. Just because to remove, I guess, the risk of any data mismatch issues, but also to release staff time from manually submitting returns. For month-end reporting, we've got a separate Qlik Sense app and a separate Qlik Sense metric framework that we're using. So it complements this, but it is kept slightly outside of it. So we probably wouldn't use live data to populate that. We also get nightly handoff files from our EMR supplier, which we'd use to populate that data. But maybe if people are interested, that could be another session if people want to talk about that type of framework, performance metric framework. That would be interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely would be. And in terms of the 2-minute loads, are you using sort of incremental loads? It sounds like your Qlik app probably refreshes everything from the aggregated files in SQL, but is there sort of any incremental loads being done anywhere? How's that being managed?
I'd have to defer to our developers for that. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's a full refresh. But I think, yeah, that's mitigated by handling some of the processing within SQL outside of it. But again, we can maybe set up a technical call, could pick up that type of thing, if that was helpful.
That would be good. And I guess you're probably only pulling a small amount of information in terms of a time period perspective. You're not necessarily pulling all the historical information, so it could actually be a full refresh. But we can look into that further after the session. So that's good. So that's all the questions. If other people do have questions, please feel free to flick them through. I've just got another one or two from myself. So there were some pretty drastic changes, it looked like, from when you implemented this. So I was just wondering, what was the before state? Like, how were decisions being made, or was this being managed before you actually implemented the command center?
Yeah. So a lot of it was interesting. So I observed some of the patient flow meetings. I've also used to do sort of senior manager operational on call. Now I used to sort of go to the flow meetings, and there was a lot of people with a lot of bits of paper. There was definitely senior operational manager who had a set of bed numbers in her pockets, which were always quoted as being the truth. These are the number of beds we have. From an information management perspective, I had people in some of the teams. I look after phoning around wards on a daily basis, trying to get numbers of beds from staff, and it was a really sort of disparate position. And it caused a lot of frustration, understandably, from senior management and the directors. So it is definitely dramatically transformed. I think the trust in this type of data by the business. I think it's also it helped to improve the literacy of our staff in terms of being comfortable working with live data themselves. I think that's kind of, there's been a sort of cultural shift, which we'll capitalise on. So yeah, definitely a very different place. And I think from implementation, an immediate benefit, but then within 3-4 months, quite a change to the way the organisation was working.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, we're probably out of time now anyway, so I'll just wrap it up. So I'd just like to thank everyone again for attending. Thank you everyone for the questions. And again, lastly, just a really massive thanks to you, Rob, for taking the time to present this to the people in ANZ, and really appreciate that it's late in the evening for yourself. And I guess what I probably didn't realise from some of the other things I've seen is how quickly this was implemented, and it was actually interesting to hear a bit about the resources. And it was quite a small team that implemented this, but also the real and tangible benefits that came out of it, and how quickly you saw some of those benefits, both on staff time, but also sort of patient outcomes. So yeah, I found that really interesting and informative, and I'm sure everyone else has as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Great, no, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.